The next feature within our virtual North Carolina Heritage Fair will be featuring blacksmith Clate Childers. And Clate is a resident of Alexander County. He's only 16 years old, and he has the prestige of being our youngest presenter in the 39 years that we have done North Carolina Heritage Fair. Clate is a unique student. He not only is homeschooled, but he has a desire to be able to master every folk art skill there is known to North Carolinians right now. And I'm happy to say he's well on his way, but today you're going to see him in his role as a blacksmith, which is pretty much his jumping off point. Clate has built his own tools, his own forge, and he not only is teaching himself, but he is seeking out mentors within our heritage realm of friends here. And so he has quickly grown in that respect as a blacksmith, and he has been featured many times already within our heritage programming, and we are certain that you will enjoy seeing him today as he presents his blacksmithing skills and traditional art forms from 1850.
Today we're going to be talking about a blacksmith and what he used to do, and I'm going to be making a project today. I'm going to be making this hook right here. Now, up until about 100 years ago, every town had a blacksmith. He's the person who made everything that you needed out of metal. Say you had a shovel or a kitchen knife or any tool that you used had to be handmade. You couldn't go to a hardware store and buy anything. So if you needed like a hook or something to hang on your wall, if it was made out of wood, it would break. That's why it has to be made out of metal. So we're going to start with a straight piece of stock like this, and I'm going to have it heating in the forge. Now the reason we have to heat metal is because if you hit it while it's cold, it's hard, you can't move it. But if you heat it up red hot, it makes the metal soft so we can form it. So this is called the forge. The forge is what heats the metal up. What I'm using to hold it is called a pair of tongs. If I was to grip it with my hand, it would burn me. It's too short. So we have to use a pair of tongs to hold the metal. And there's all different shapes of tongs for holding different sizes of metal. And the blacksmith would have made all these himself. There was no tool store like Lowe's or Home Depot where he could go to buy his tools. Everything he had to custom make for himself. So when you start a project like this, you have to think what needs to be done first. So we have a curve that needs made, we have a spot that needs flattened, we have a curl, a twist, and so I'm thinking in my mind what would be the easiest thing to start with. So we're going to start with this tip and work to here, and then we'll make a nail that will fashion it to the board. What I did there is draw this thick square rod down to a little tiny point, so that way we have something to curl. So it only lasts a few seconds before the heat loses and you have to stick it back in the forge to get it hot again. you saw me working on this big chunk of steel here. This is called an anvil. You have to have a very large, thick chunk of metal to forge on. If you tried to forge on this wood, it would burn. If you tried to forge on a rock, it would break. So this is called the anvil, and this pointy part here is called the horn. This is what we shape round pieces on. Now we put a little tiny curl on the end of the hook, and the reason you need that is if it come to a sharp point and you tried to hang your coat up on the wall, it would poke a hole through it. So giving a little curl allows you to hang cloth on this hook without it poking a hole in it. This is a hammer right here. This is what I'm shaping the metal with. You have to have a hammer. You can't just mash it with your hands. You have to have something that will create enough force to flatten the metal out. And there's all different shapes. This one has a flat face for flattening metal. And this one here has a round face for cupping metal. So you have to have different tools to shape whatever you're doing. And all these would have been handmade by the blacksmith himself. What I'm about to do here is cool the tip off in the water. That little tip that we just curled, if I was to beat on that, it would flatten it out for the next step. So remember that if you have cold metal, it doesn't mash out, and hot metal does. So I'm going to cool the tip. That way we can hammer it. Now it's starting to look like a hook, but we need a way to mount it to the wall. It has to have a place with a hole in it for the nail to go through it. You can't drive a nail just through steel like you can wood. So we're going to flatten a little section out. The first thing I need to do though is this is a little too long. So in the top of the anvil there's a square hole. This is called the hardy hole, and tools that go in the hardy hole are called hardy tools. So this is a cut-off hardy. Whatever shape you put in the bottom, that's what shape will be put into the steel. So you see how this is shaped like a triangle? That sharp point of the triangle will make a triangle shape in the metal, and if you do it long enough, it'll cut whatever waste you need off. Here's some other things that a blacksmith would have made. This here is a door latch. So this holds your door from just when the wind blows swinging open and swinging closed. Nowadays you can just go buy a doorknob, but they used to would have to hand make a latch like this. So one part would go on the door and the other part on the wall, and when you wanted to close the door, like that, so that way your door couldn't open. Now we don't want to go all the way through or I'll dull my edge, so we get it to where it almost goes through. And you can take another pair of tongs, cause it's hot, and just break that little tip right off. Now that, since a triangle comes through from both sides, it leaves a little bit of a sharp point on it, so I'm just going to take that off. Now it's back to the fire so we can flatten out a spot for the nail to go. This forge right now is running about 2,000 degrees. Your oven you use at home to cook food in gets maybe about 500 degrees, so this is about 4 times as hot as the oven you would use at home. Here's something else a blacksmith would have to made. You didn't used to have electricity in your house to be able to go and turn a light switch on. So after it got dark and you wanted to see, you would have to use a candle made out of wax. And you would light the wick. But if you hold this in your hand, that hot wax is going to melt down and burn your fingers. So you would put this on a candle holder. That way you could carry your candle around without it. When the wax drips down, it would catch on this little pull here and it wouldn't burn you. And that also keeps the candle standing straight up, so that way it wouldn't fall over and catch your house on fire. This is a candle holder. It's probably hot now. See, now here what we've done is we've took this straight stock and flattened it out at the top. This gives us a big enough place to make our hole for the nail. So to put the hole in the hook, we're going to use what's called a punch. All it is a piece of round bar that is very square on the end to create a sharp edge. So when we drive this through the steel, it will leave the same size of hole as this round bar and give us a place to put our nail in. Hold the flat part of the hook straight on top, okay? Just like that. This creates an indentation in one side where we just drove our punch into it, and it leaves a little shadow on the other side that shows us right to where I put our punch, and it will drive that slug straight out and leave a hole in there. So this time we'll flip it over on the back side, hold it right over the forge I'm using now is running on gas. They did not used to have gas. What they would use was coal. It was a mineral that come out of the ground and it burned really, really hot, but it wasn't burned by itself. It had to have a blast of air blowing on it. So they would use what's called a bellows. It was a big wooden triangle with leather in between that would blow air. And a lot of times what the children's job to be, the blacksmith kids, would be to pump the bellows. So he would be working in the forge and they would be pumping the bellows, blowing air into the forge. So now, see, our punch is all the way through the hook. That means we've made a hole in it. So to get the punch out, it's stuck in there. We'll put it over our hardy hole again, and it comes right out. Now you can see we've made a hole in our hook. So the hook is it's pretty much done now. It would work, but we can make it look a little bit nicer. We can make it look a little fancier by putting a twist in it. And this does make it look better, but it also makes it stronger. Straight metal is weaker, it can bend, but if you twist the metal, it makes it stronger where it won't bend. And another thing I wanted to show you is the forge is red hot. You can see that it's hot, but this looks black. See, it's the same color as this, and I'm touching this, but it can still be hot when it's black. See how that's steaming? So you still have to use your tongs to hold it. So to twist it, we're going to use what's called a twisting wrench. We grab it with one pair of tongs and hold the twisting wrench on the other, and we can twist the metal. The metal I'm using today is called steel. There's other metals you probably heard of, like gold or copper or brass, but steel is the strongest metal. The other metals are softer, and this is what they had the most of. So it had to be mined out of the ground as iron ore, is what it was called. And then they would melt it down and make steel out of it. And so you can heat steel and make it into any shape that you would like it to be. Steel cools down very fast, so I have to have my plan ready with what I'm going to do with it. So I'm going to grab it with these tongs, get it positioned in these where I want it, and then grab my twisting wrench. I have everything laid out just where I need it, so I won't be wasting time letting the metal cool. Right where I want it. My twisting wrench is ready. We're going to put that on. Give it a nice twist. Like that. Then we'll just clean it up a little bit. Now our hook is done. So if we want to hang this hook up on our wall, so the reason they had hooks was so everything's not laying around on the floor. In the kitchen, all your forks and spoons and ladles, things you used to cook with, was hung on the wall, so everything's not laying on the floor. It made it more organized and cleaner. But to hang this up on your wall, you need something to hold it, and what they used was a nail through the hole. So now what we're going to do is make the nail. I'm going to cool this off so I can touch it in water. See, now it's cool. This is what the nail will be made out of. It starts as a long ground rod, and you can make a bunch of nails out of this. So when you buy nails now in the store, they're round shaped like this rod, but when I forge it, I'm going to make it into a square. This is how it used to have to be done. Instead of buying a whole box of thousands of nails, each one that a machine made, each nail had to be hand forged out. And having it the square shape actually holds better in wood. When you drive a round nail in, it can work out, but when you make a hand forged square nail, it'll hold stronger in the wood. People used to never would throw anything away. Nowadays, if you have a tool and it breaks, you just throw it away and go buy a new one. But tools were hard to come by, and any supplies were, and that each one had to be handmade. So when a tool broke, they would take it back to the blacksmith and he would make other things out of it. Say you had a shovel that half your shovel broke off, they would take it back to the blacksmith and he could make nails out of it or make a knife out of it or something else. What we've done here is the same as how we started the hook. We draw a taper. A taper is where it starts big and slowly graduates to a point, like a triangle shape. This will make the nail start small, a point, so it can start in the wood, but get big enough to where it will hold the hook up without breaking. So now the nail has no head on it. So if you wanted to hang the hook up, it would slide right off. So we need a head on the nail. So you have to use what's called a nail header. We'll see how this works in just a minute. So I'm going to put the nail in the nail header and mark where it needs to be cut off. That. So we put our hot cut hardy that we used earlier into our hardy hole. And we'll make one mark, so that helps us find it when we heat the metal up again. Making nails would be something that the children your age probably would have done a lot, because it was using small bits of metal. You didn't have to forge any big things, and they needed hundreds, thousands of nails. So in the evenings, the children would sit by the fireplace and make nail after nail after nail, and then when they would be done with a building or something, they would actually burn the building down and get the nails again to reuse. They didn't want to waste anything, and a lot of the nails would be bent, so the children would sit around and straighten the nails. have to work quick. We're gonna score the nail. Take our hardy out, put it in the nail header, break it off, and now we can make a head on the nail. And now that nail is stuck in there. It is not going to come out because it's hot. When things are hot, they expand. When things are cold, they get smaller. So it's hot now, it's expanded in that hole. But when I cool it off in water, that shrinks it just enough to where with a little work, this one's a little bit tight. There we go. Our nail will come out, and now we can use it to nail the hook onto our wood. Now that is still a little hot. So right here, I have our wood, which this is a scrap piece. This would be hung on your house like this. So we take our hook and take our nail, put it through the hole in the hook, and then hammer it in. And now that holds the hook very tightly against the wall. Now you can hang stuff on it. But nowadays, if you have a nail, you buy one that's just long enough to fit through your wood. But what people would used to do is leave the nail longer, make it stick out. And so if I leave it like this, it can work out. But if I bend this over, that's called cinching the nail. And now the nail is bent, and there is no way this hook can ever come off the wall. It's held very solidly. So I hope you've learned something today about what blacksmiths did and how they used to be very important. And maybe now when you go to the store and buy something made out of metal or a nail, you'll realize that, hey, every piece of this would used to have to be handmade by the town blacksmith.